Hi friends, my name is Madison and I'm here to tell you my tale. Since I'm wrapping up my trip here in Ecuador, I thought it was appropriate to finish this video, give some closure to this terrifying near-death experience, and share my story. So let's begin. It all started on a sunny day off the coast of Ecuador. Some friends and I were headed to Salango to do some spearfishing and freediving. There is a reef off the coast, so there's a reef between the island and the beach that we were trying to swim out to. So I was going to do some freediving, Annie was coming along to snorkel, and Mike was going to do some spearfishing. We started to swim out, but Annie quickly turned back around. She was smart. Be like Annie. She followed her intuition and she listened to her gut that said, I don't feel comfortable. Mike and I, however, were eager to get out to this reef, see some fish, try to catch some dinner. So we go. We're swimming along, maybe a half hour, diving around, doing some mellow dives. The visibility wasn't great that day, but we could see the bottom for the most part. We get out and we're almost to the reef, but not quite. We just couldn't quite get there. The current had been pretty strong as soon as we got out a ways from the beach, but he had fins, I didn't, but I'm a pretty strong swimmer, so I felt comfortable enough to continue on. And then we're like, dang man, we just aren't quite making it. The current is just pushing us through. So we start to head back, but we're realizing that we are floating pretty quickly south. So parallel to shore, this current was serious. I was looking at the bottom, we were moving. At one point I was doing full freestyle, like all of my might against the current, and I look over and I see Mike and I'm like, Mike, this is not right. We were so close to these rocks over here. I was so afraid of getting crushed. So we're near these rocks. This was the first point of the whole day that I was starting to get that sinking feeling like this wasn't right. This is not what we were planning. We need to get away from these rocks. This is so dangerous. So we start to swim out and we're getting pushed. We are moving. At this point we couldn't see the beach where we launched off anymore. I think that's when I began to fight the panic, because panicking is when you make mistakes. And so we knew that the current wasn't as strong out in the water a little bit, but on the edge, I think that's where the water was coming through. Like that's where the force of this current was really strong. There was a boat that came through between the island and the thing and the shore where we were. So we were like yelling with our hands above the water, like trying to tread water, get their attentions, like screaming and whistling. And they, of course, didn't hear us over the sound of their motor. And that at that moment was that's when it tipped. That's when I was like, I was scared, and panic was like starting to set in a little bit. But I really appreciate the training I had as a lifeguard. Even though it was years ago, it taught me to just respond. You don't react, you just respond. And that, I think, eliminates the area where panic can really set in. So I just said, we need to swim out. We need to go out to the island. We need to swim towards the island. At least at first we weren't going to go to the island, but we were going to try to swim back to the island and around, like so back towards the reef, and try to catch it around again. And these big rolling waves, the swells were really big, so we could look up when the waves were high and kind of look where we were. At this point, I think we realized that we weren't going to be able to swim all the way around. We were getting pretty tired. It took about an hour to get from those rocks to the point where we actually were on the island. And during that hour swimming, that was the scariest part of this whole thing, because we were starting to worry that we were going to miss the island because the current was so strong. That was our only option at the moment. Hindsight 2020. I think we could have maybe swam around, but just doing what we did, we had one option. So I was doing my best to keep calm. I was like, Mike, we're going to be fine. Just keep swimming. In my head, I was scared. And we couldn't see the bottom anymore, and so this brought in element number 2 of my one true fear in this life is open water that's murky. Murky open water is like my fear. And here we are off the coast of Ecuador, swimming for our lives to this island. And the thought of being not at the top of the food chain out there, I didn't even allow that to be a thought. I had to get to the island. I didn't have time to think about sharks or other fish or things that wanted to taste me. I didn't even let fear enter my mind at this point. I grew up in the water. I'm a fish. I know a lot of people say that, and a lot of people are, and a lot of people get it. But I started swimming, I think I was 2 or 3 years old, my first swim lessons. I was in synchronized swimming for 5.5 years. I was a lifeguard for 3 years. I taught swim lessons. I was a snorkel guide twice in 2 different places. I was a kayak guide. I worked at a dive shop. I was freediving to 60 feet when I was 18. Like, I love the water. I am insanely comfortable and confident in water. And I used every single second of my experience in water and on land and other survival type scenarios. Everything came together in this moment, I think, to save my life and to save my mind, because I think drowning, there's this whole other element to this that gets a little dark. I hope you guys are ready, because in the Virgin Islands when I was 18, I lived there for 4 months, and I had a dream there that was so powerful and vivid. I had a series of dreams over this week, and some of them are really scary and messed up, as dreams are. But there was one where I drowned. I drowned in my dream, and it was beautiful. It was so peaceful and beautiful, and I remember sinking down, and I can see the light kind of fading and these bubbles coming up, and this world, this ocean world around me, I can see, and it was so beautiful and peaceful. And I'm sinking, and in my dream, it goes black. I was dead for 3 days, and then I wake up in the hospital, and everyone's like, "We're so happy you're alive." Like, then someone carried me out. I think my boyfriend at the time was in my dream, and he carried me out of the hospital. And so since I've had this dream, it was 8 years ago, always kind of thought it would be kind of poetic and dark, if that was how I did die, because that is my favorite place. Next to snowboarding, being in the water is my favorite thing. And that dream came into my mind when I was out for that hour swimming to the island, that's not going to happen today. Today is not the day that I bring that dream to life. But I've just always kind of had this thought that would be the way I'd go. So I was fighting more than just the current for that hour out there. I was fighting my mind and my memories and my dream and my fear of open water. There was so much more than just the physical risk and danger. Even though I had no real clue, I felt like we were gonna be okay. And I set that as my truth, because if I had let another thought creep in that we weren't gonna make it, you can't let hope die in these scenarios. I remember at one point distinctively thinking about my mom and thinking about how, of all the stupid shit I've done, and all the close calls, and this couldn't be the way that she found out something happened to me. This could not be the news that my mother got about her daughter, the swimmer, her whole life, drowned or was lost out at sea. So at this hour-long period of swimming, and I'm taking inventory every so often, poking my head up, seeing where we are in relation, and this point, I remember this little house or lighthouse on the top of this point, and that was kind of my check-in point. So I'd look up and see where it was, and it was so far away. We had entered in the water, and this point is to our left, And now I'm looking back and it is so far away. We didn't take breaks. We just stopped. We would stop to be like, hey, are you okay? Let's just keep swimming. So the current, we could tell, wasn't as strong in the middle, luckily, thank God. And we were making progress. Finally, after 45 minutes, it felt like we were getting closer to the island. So we're closing in on this island, and then this other element arises. This is not a beach. This is not a sandy beach that we're swimming towards. This is rocks. And you can see the waves crashing, and then these big white spurts come up from the force of them impacting on these rocks. So it's like, okay, we're not gonna get swept out to sea anymore. That's no longer our danger. But now we have to get on this island intact. And we're kind of closer, we're assessing like where's the best place to enter. There's this big rock sticking out. It's probably sticking out maybe 10 feet. It's like maybe we should just climb on that and like look for a boat. But these waves were crashing over this rock. Out of every 6 waves, maybe 3 would be big. So you kind of had a 3-wave window to make some progress. So we kind of got split up at this point though. So Mike went around a little bit and I kind of went straight in. And I would like try to ride the 3rd wave in a little bit, but it would also tumble you. So there was these rocks, like it was pretty shallow, but I was trying to just be super flat to not get smashed into these rocks down below. And at one point, I'm on my back, like I had just gotten tumbled, I'm on my back, another wave's coming, and I just grabbed my head because I would have been smashed up, and I got crushed down onto the bottom, onto my back. But I was okay, like my head was okay. I had some scratches and bruises from that, but I like crawled onto shore as fast as I could. And at this point, I think was the first time I like was breathing. Mike was still in the water, and I was trying to keep an eye on him, but I was like, holy shit, like I'm not gonna drown now. Like element 1, getting swept out to sea. Element 2, getting smashed onto rocks. Like I was on dry land, I was bruised and cut up, but I was alive and I was not swept out to sea. Just made it to this fucking island. Got slammed into these rocks on the way in. Mike's still fucking out there. This is gonna be a full-on rescue mission. This is the sketchiest shit I've ever done. But Mike's okay. But finally, eventually Mike got to shore and he was okay. So then we just like sat there. So we're sitting there and this boat comes out. This is a fishing boat, and it's a ways away. It's a pretty far off, but there's trash on the island, which is so sad, but like I was so thankful for that at this point because I had like a big jug and like a big thing, and I was like beating this thing, making some noise and waving my hands, and Mike had his little blow up thing and we were just like, whoa, whistling. And so we're on this island off the coast of Ecuador. There's one boat right out there. We're trying to get his attention. You can see that. It keeps going in and out of the waves. And we're just trying to get rescued right now, so this is fun. We might be, Castaway 2.0 tonight. This little friend I made. Trying to keep my shit together, not panic. We got swept out in the current. We went in on the other side of this island. This is fun. We're having fun. Fuck this. So we're sitting here for feels like forever doing this, and eventually, finally, this boat, we get the boat's attention. And that was, I don't know how to explain this feeling of relief and elation, and also the gravity of this all had, I think, just smacked into me at that point, and I just cried. After waving this guy down for 20-30 minutes, he finally saw us. Holy shit. Trying to keep it cool. Almost fucking didn't make this one. I was trying so hard as soon as we touched island to not cry, because I was just like, you are still in survival mode, your adrenaline is raging. You can't break right now. You can't break down. And I finally, when the boat saw us and they like waved back at us, I just realized what we had just done and how fucking stupid we were. I was like so happy and scared and sad, and I just realized like I was so proud of myself in that hour that we were swimming from shore, from the rocks to the island, for not panicking. And Mike even said later, he's like, thank you for keeping your cool, because you helped me keep my cool. Because if one of us had started to panic and be like, we're fucking getting swept out, instead of just being like, no, we're gonna be okay, like I don't know what would have happened. So the boat, we get the boat's attention. Now we have to get back out in the water. Boat sees us, we're walking around, gonna get out. Mike's gonna try to swim it like a champion. The waves are crashing into this island. Mike is a champion and he decides to swim. He had fins, he has gear, he's like, I just need to swim. He had giant fins on and he could just like power through. They were waving to me to walk around the side. So this is when I start to climb on these cliffs around the edge to get out to a point where I can jump out to the boat. This is the best fight I've ever seen in my life with the boat. Coming to save us. Mike swimming, walking along these rocks, fucking up my feet. The further out I got, the waves, the swells were so big coming in. At one point I was holding onto this rock and this wave came crashing over, and it took every ounce of strength for me to hang onto this rock and not get smashed. So that happened a few times where I'm just like holding on, trying not to get washed away. And I'm finally out to this point where I can't really go any further and I have to jump out. But there's these rocks, these swells are coming in. It's probably at least 10 feet. Like it was right up to the rock and then it would drop right down and it would be right up to the rock, and I had to time it. So again, these come in about threes, so I had to time it on the third wave so I wouldn't have another giant wave coming. I had to time it to where the swell would meet right at the top of these rocks and I would jump, or else I would have hit rocks down below. So I had to time it, jump off this cliff into the rocks, and I just balled up. Like you stop yourself as soon as I hit the water. I just like no, not gonna hit a rock right now. And I swam all of the strength I had left out to this boat. And they pulled me in, and I just collapsed on the floor. This feeling of, I can feel it right now, I just got full body chills. This feeling of being on a boat with two fishermen and Mike. I was exhausted and so happy. You can see Mike's face here. We were exhausted, but we made it. We went from carelessly freediving and spearfishing to getting swept up, nearly smashed into some rocks, to almost missing this island, getting swept out to the open ocean, to not getting smashed by the other rocks on the other side of this island. And we managed to get this boat's attention and get rescued off the island, jump into the rocks off a cliff. How? I don't know. It was insane to kind of be a passenger, because your brain and your body is just in survival mode. Like your adrenaline and your survival instincts, they just take over, and you just okay, like this is what's going on, this is what we're doing. You kind of let it happen, and you let it take you. And fear is such a powerful force. It all just came together and we made it. And the feeling of touching land again. Oh my God, I'm so happy. on the other side. Annie was like, what the fuck? I was like 20 minutes away from catching a boat and trying to go find you guys. And I knew, I think in my heart, that even if we had got swept out, or if we hadn't got that boat's attention, like we had 2 people on the other side waiting for us. And I knew at this point they were starting to wonder, because when we went out, we're like, yeah, we'll go out for an hour or 2. And this was 3 hours later. So I knew, I think in my heart, that we were gonna be okay. Even though I was like, I don't know if we're gonna be okay. I went dark for just a little bit, I won't lie. But I think that is part of the beauty of this as well. That was terrifying. We made it. Mike, we did it.
The survivors. We made it.
I'm sure a lot of you guys have had brushes with death, and you know the feeling of a near-death experience, and you know the taste of life after that, and how beautiful and amazing everything is. And I think that was all part of it. Like, part of going dark for a minute brought that light back so much brighter. And I was really proud of myself after being able to talk myself through that moment, through that hour of being like, what if? And I had just been stung by a jellyfish while surfing the day before. It had wrapped around my leg. And then this happened, and then the next day my phone was stolen. So, yeah. So that was tough. I was in a funk for a good little while after this happened. But the most beautiful part of all of this, we got back to our house in Ayampe, and we just were like, I had to teach yoga in a few hours, and I was joking on the way back. I was like, can we just delay yoga an hour? They're like, girl, you don't need to teach it. And I was like, well, I think it might be really powerful if I teach this class. Like, it might be the best yoga class I've ever taught. So we go back. I go to rinse off, and I'm in the shower. I didn't turn the lights on. For some reason, I remember looking at the light switch. I was like, no, I kind of just want to be in the dark. I go in the shower, and I'm just sitting there under the water, under this fresh water, and I look down, and I see a little blue dot. And I go to brush it off, and it was bioluminescence, and it lit up, and I looked down, and I'm going like this off my chest, and I was covered in these bioluminescence. I felt like I was an avatar. It was so beautiful, like these natural lights, and it was dark, so I just was under the water, like rubbing these bioluminescence, lighting them up. It was so beautiful. I wept in the shower. I was just like, this is the most beautiful thing that has ever happened. I just thought it was some beautiful divine sign that I was not done, and that there was still some magic left in me to share with the world. Because that moment, that 10-second window in the shower where I was celebrating these bioluminescence, was the most beautiful thing I have ever experienced. It was this whole, all of it, not just the physical beauty of it, but inside I just was like, this is my magic. I am not done, and I still have more stories to tell, and more shit to get into, and more adventures, and wow. Please be so safe in the ocean. If you go out swimming, even if you've done it 100 times, just check the current reports, check what's going on. This 3-day period where these currents were so strong, people weren't even surfing outside of our hostel because the current was so crazy strong. Call your mother, tell her that you love her. That was the first thing I did when I got back. Before I even showered, I went and I texted my mom. I just said I love you, because I was thinking about her out there, and she was part of the reason I was swimming, gotta go. Can't have mama find out that her daughter drowned, because that is not how this cookie crumbles. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you see that I like to write poems. This inspired one of my poems. Normally they're pretty light and fun and cute, but one of them that I wrote inspired by this event talks about death and how it's waiting, but we're not always ready. Maybe we'll never be ready. I was thinking of all the one last things I wanted to do, one more. I wanted to talk to my mom one more time, and this made me realize I had some unfinished business with myself, with some other people. I truly think when death comes for me, I will be ready because I've lived such a good life and I have done like some amazing things. But if you'd like to see some more poems, you can follow me on Instagram, or the poems are also on my blog. Thanks for tagging along, friends. I hope you enjoyed hearing my story. And as always, what do we say to the god of death? Not today. Not today. Gotta carry on, face your fears and carry on.